We waited from 1940 till 1949 to come to the United States.
Why that long?
You had to wait because of the war, the Second World War. We came to Cuba, 1949. And then we stayed in Florida 3 days. My father couldn't get a job there, so we came to Chicago. We stayed in my aunt's house.
So you came in a boat?
No, by airplane.
By airplane?
DC-3, very old airplane, 2 engines. There were no jets in those days. Okay, what else? Then I began to go to school, grammar school, Pope School here in Chicago. I'm 16 in Avers, 16 in Springfield, something like that. Then we moved farther east to Kedzie Avenue. My father used to work in a barber shop, so he finally decided to go on his own. And then he opened up a barber shop on 16 and Kedzie. That's all. The neighborhood now is going bye-bye. Okay, so we stayed there for a while. Then we moved 1 block south. And I started working, helping my father to cut hair. But in the meantime, I told my father I'm going to Cuba to get, barber license.
So you went back to Cuba?
In 1960. No, 59. I picked up my brother in Florida, Miami, and I told him, let's go to Cuba, I want to get my barber license. Okay, so through connections with a friend of ours, I spoke to this guy. This guy talked to one guy from a union. He said, Nino, the barber is no good in Cuba. I said, I don't care. I'm taking my barber license to Chicago so I can apply in Chicago with the license. I don't have to go to school in Chicago. Why Chicago? We had an aunt here. My mother had a sister.
Okay.
My sister told my mother, my father, let's come over here because in Cuba we don't have any relatives at all. As a matter of fact, there's a picture of me over there where I was maybe 10 years old. I used to enjoy school over there. And to come to a new country, I didn't know what was the difference, to learn how to speak English. It wasn't the same, You gotta, you gotta get adapted to it. But as a kid, when you're a kid, you pick up the language right away. But my father, he didn't speak English, he only spoke Spanish. As a matter of fact, my father is Jewish, and my mother is Jewish too. And my father came to Cuba in 1927 or 26, something like that. And then my mother came to Cuba from Russia, from the Ukraine, in 1928, 29, something like that. They migrated to, my mother, she brought her mother with her from Kiev, which was the Ukraine. She came to Cuba. My aunt, my grandmother used to come and visit my aunt, her daughter here in Chicago, and then she didn't like Chicago, my grandma. She went back to Cuba. She said to my mother, I'd rather live in Cuba with all the black people, because they were wonderful to her. Those days, everything was simple. As a matter of fact, when I went back to Cuba in 1959, I only paid $10 from Miami to Havana. And $10 one way and $10 back. That was in 1959. In those days, before the embargo. Embargo in the United States in 1962. There was, people used to travel back and forth. And I think we did the right thing leaving Cuba in those days, because they were shooting in Havana. They were shooting, in the streets. My father used to say, when you hear a shooting, lay low on the floor. He taught me how to cut hair, my father. And I picked it up looking at other barbers. Since I lived in a barbershop, I used to look at my father. My brother, he say, I'm going to work in the another corner, because in the other corner there was another barber with a different system. and he picked up the system, and then he said, Nino, like this and like this and like this. And it was very simple. I remember was May 1st, 1949. In Cuba, we had a parade. I used to go to the parades in Havana with the school. It used to be a nice, the education system is very high, very good.
In Cuba?
In Cuba, it was very good. Compared to the education here where I went to school, kids were here animals compared to the kids over there.
So you came here then in order to find a job and start?
No, not to find it, no. No, nothing like that.
In
those days, there were many jobs everywhere in Chicago. Chicago used to be the #1 city in the world with jobs, you know? No matter where you go, you had a job. As a matter of fact, when I worked in a barber shop, the customers used to come and tell me, Nino, do you know anybody that wants to go to work? Because there were a lot of factories in the area. And then when I got tired working in a barber shop, closed the bar in 1969, when the Beatles came over, all the guys used to wear long hair, you know, long hair. So we closed the barber shop, and I said, I'm going to go to work in someplace else. So I worked in Heinemann's Bakery for a couple of years. So I used to work there, and there were about 4 guys at nighttime. I had the night shift, and when the machine broke down, I came to the aid of it. And I learned fast. The reason I left Cuba is because when you come to the United States, you don't want to live nowhere else. You know, everything was very simple for me here. I always had money in my pocket.
In comparison to?
Over there? Yeah, over there, well, my father used to work for 60 cents a haircut in Havana. And over here it was 80 cents. 20 cents more. And then as the time went on, the prices kept on going up in Chicago, you know, with the haircuts. And the tips that I used to make, used to buy gasoline for 32 cents a gallon of gas. 32 cents a gallon. So I bought myself my father, we went to buy a first car. It was a 1953 Buick. Beautiful Buick, 4 doors. I bought 4 lots in the cemetery here in Chicago. So that's my home. Chicago, yeah. If it's cold, it's okay. You wear a jacket. You wear a coat. You cold, you put on the heat.
And why not Cuba?
What am I gonna do with it? I got nobody. I met Fidel Castro in 1954 or 56. I'm going back. My brother had a barber shop on Grand State.
Here in Chicago?
Here in Chicago.
So you met him in Chicago?
I didn't meet him directly because I couldn't recognize him. He was a young kid then. He's 84 years old, 86 now. And then I'm going back to 1954, 55. He was there with a bunch of guys, and I don't think he had ever showed up in the barbershop. But they were talking about him, and they were collecting money for his purpose.
What is the purpose?
For the revolution. I admire the man because he got, en español, blanquillos.
¿Qué significa eso?
Cojones. You understand? He's fighting the biggest country in the world. The United States wants to dominate Cuba at all cost. But how should I say? He's like cutting the hemisphere in half, you know? Cuba this way, United States that way. And now he controls Venezuela. He don't control, he tells the government of Venezuela how to run the government, how to do this, how to do that. He's sending them so many doctors in Cuba, to Venezuela and all over South America. That's the business in Cuba, is to educate the people so they can become doctors and ship them overseas and rent them. rent doctors. You got pro and you got con. Those people that lost in Cuba, you know, their houses, their business and all that, you know, they hate the government of Cuba. But some people benefited, some people didn't benefit. And between the Cubans, you can't talk about Fidel because they hate him. You know, to the Cuban in Miami, he's a criminal. You know, he executed quite a few people. And maybe he had to, maybe he not, I don't know. But there was politics in those days. Well, there's an embargo going on, and you can't have no, what do you call it, the internet in Cuba. They don't want no internet.
What do you think about it?
Actually, it's bad, you know, because some people want to communicate back and forth, but through the internet, there are a lot of American spies. They want to intervene in Cuba. That's why Fidel don't want to, you know, wants to keep it without it. You might have a cell phone, but I don't know how the cell phone works in Cuba. You know, it's very expensive. Some people in Cuba only make $20 a month. 20 or 30 pesos a month. How can you afford internet or telephone, you know, to communicate? The only way you can communicate is from Miami. You call your relatives in Cuba. You know what Fidel say? Another 50 years of Cuban Fidel being in power. And I don't think there'll be an agreement between the United States and Cuba. Not for another 50 years. A friend of ours drew a picture. I think he was sitting, and he drew the picture with a chalk, something like that. So I kept that picture over the years. He had his own ideas. He came from a wealthy family in Cuba, and he came to the United States to talk to some of the, you know, business people and government people, and he wanted factories in Cuba. He wanted to, you know, progresar the system in Cuba, because there were too many poor people, and the rich people used to come from the United States and abuse the young girls, you know, and abuse them. You know, when you control the country, you do as you please. So he wanted to wipe everything off. I have to visit my grandmother's grave, and I applied for passport. Because I was born in Cuba, I got to have a Cuban passport besides an American passport. And I applied for that 1 year ago already, and I haven't received no answer. And the person that sold me the passport, and it cost me $220 to get my visa, you know, permit to go to Cuba. But she told me, Nino, you gotta wait, because between the United States and Cuba, there's no agreement on American tourists to go to Cuba. And see, I'm an American now, so it's very hard for me to go to Cuba, because there's an embargo going on. And until this embargo is lifted, then we'll all be able to go and visit Cuba. Yeah, this is the old passport.
That's the old one? From what year?
1949. Father is the one that got it for me. We all had to, all my brothers had to have a passport, and my mother and my father, we had to have a passport to enter the United States. How else are you gonna enter? Orlando, he has relative. Orlando has a relative in Cuba. He can go whenever he pleases.
Because he has a relative.
Yeah. If not, no, you can't. No. So I wanted to use his brother's address, but it's still pending. So before I die, I want to go to visit my grandmother's grave, so I can see, you know, the situation.